Cardi B just told the entire internet that there is no evidence against her baby daddy. Not weak evidence. Not he's innocent. Her exact words, on a live audio room where over 100,000 people were listening, were, "Where is the evidence? There is no evidence." And then, before the echo could even settle, the man she was talking about, the man accusing Stefon Diggs of things that would end most NFL careers overnight, logged back on. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't come for Cardi B the way people expected. He came calm. He came surgical. And he came holding a stack of paper that has been quietly sitting inside a federal courthouse in Maryland since October. 17 pages, 5 counts, 1 buried settlement, and a court order from a federal judge that reads like a heat-seeking missile pointed straight at Stefon Diggs. Baby, pull your chair in, because this one has layers. And if you think Cardi B walked into this as a bystander, you have not been paying attention. Stay until the end, because I'm going to read you the court file line by line, and by the time we're done, you're going to know exactly which one of these two men is lying. And you're going to see why Cardi B may have just made the most expensive public statement of her entire career. Because that album she's promoting, that Black Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift arc she's chasing, it might all be sitting on top of a courtroom she didn't read the docket for. Now, if you've been watching this thing from the jump, you already know the outline. But for the people just walking in, let me hand you the story in 90 seconds, because you cannot understand what just happened without the timeline. There is a man named Chris Blake Griffith. He used to move in Stefon Diggs's inner circle. Same rooms, same trips, same phones lighting up at 3 in the morning. Over 100 pages of text messages between the two of them. Stefon's own lawyers do not deny that number. Chris steps out publicly and says Stefon Diggs made a pass at him. A sexual pass. And that when he shut it down, things got violent. Not once. Twice. And according to Chris, the second time was on camera. Then the story goes national. Because Stefon Diggs is not just a wide receiver. Stefon Diggs is the father of Cardi B's youngest child, a baby boy born last November. And the moment the internet started whispering that Cardi B's baby daddy might be gay, Cardi B did what Cardi B always does. She logged in, and she went to war. She jumped in comment sections. She hopped in audio spaces. She fired off replies at 3 in the morning. And in the middle of all of it, she said the one sentence that turned this from a rap blog story into a legal nuke. There is no evidence. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. Chris Blake Griffith heard her. He didn't rant. He didn't spiral. He opened a note, and he wrote what might be the most controlled response I have ever seen from a man in the middle of a scandal this big. He started by saying, and I'm reading his words, that he had too much respect for Bart here and for women in general to say anything disparaging back to her. He complimented her. He then told her, gently, to please take off the blinders, because his time around that collective predated her by years. Translation? You met this man last season. I have been in these rooms since before you knew his address. And then, without raising his voice one time, he pointed her, and everybody watching, toward the paperwork. The paperwork that Cardi B told 100 million followers did not exist. So I did what she apparently did not do. I pulled the docket. Stefon Diggs versus Christopher Blake Griffith, filed in federal court, October of last year. 17 pages of a complaint, 5 counts, and enough footnotes to build a small library. And I'm going to walk you through it, because the story inside that file is not the story you have been hearing on TikTok. The story inside that file is worse, for somebody. The only question is who. Count 1 and count 2, defamation. Twice over. Count 3, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Counts 4 and 5, tortious interference with Stefon Diggs's endorsement contracts. That last one is where his lawyers get loud. Because Stefon Diggs's endorsement deals, his UGG campaign in particular, the same UGG campaign that put him next to Sarah Jessica Parker on billboards, have morality clauses baked into them. And Chris Blake Griffith, according to the filing, walked onto Stefon Diggs's own UGG advertisement online and tagged the brand directly. He wrote, in a public comment his lawyers have preserved word for word, that Stefon Diggs drugged him, that Stefon Diggs attempted to assault him, that Stefon Diggs then conspired with an employee to organize a hit on his life, and that Stefon Diggs's brother, Darrell Diggs, was charged and convicted in connection with that incident. He then compared Stefon Diggs to Aaron Hernandez 2.0, in his exact phrasing, on the endorser's own campaign page, tagging the sponsor. If you have ever wondered what a lawsuit filing looks like when a legal team is truly furious, this is what it looks like. Now here is Stefon Diggs's version of the night everything supposedly happened. May 20th, 2023. His foundation, the Diggs Deep Foundation, throws a charity basketball game in Washington, D.C. 600 guests. $30,000 raised for single mothers. And yes, The irony of that line writing itself is not lost on anybody reading the file. Stefon Diggs personally invites Chris Blake Griffith. That detail is not in dispute. Stefon Diggs's own lawyers admit, on paper, that the two of them were friendly enough for a personal invite. After the game, a group heads back to Stefon Diggs's home in Rockville, Maryland. According to the filing, Stefon Diggs is not even there yet. His assistant walks into the primary bedroom and finds Chris Blake Griffith alone inside it. Her word, in the file, is prying. Chris allegedly tells her Stefon Diggs promised him a tour of the house. She doesn't buy it. She walks him back downstairs. Later that same night, the assistant sees Chris Blake Griffith coming up out of the basement carrying a suitcase, which she describes as him collecting Stefon Diggs's personal belongings on his way out the door. They ask him to leave. They put him in a rideshare. They send him to the airport. That is Stefon Diggs's version. In Stefon Diggs's version, the only thief in that house was the man now suing him. And that is precisely the sentence Cardi B was leaning on when she said there was evidence of Chris stealing and no evidence of Chris's claims. That story is not something Cardi B made up on a live. That story is sitting inside a federal complaint that Cardi B either read, was briefed on, or absorbed by osmosis from a legal team that is watching this play out in real time. Which one of those three is true only Cardi B can answer, but she went on air like she had personally proofread it. But, and here is where the paperwork stops being kind to any one narrative. Chris Blake Griffith's version of the exact same night is also inside that filing. Word for word. Because Stefon Diggs's lawyers attached the police report Chris gave to Montgomery County Police, and then labeled every single line of it false. Which means, whether Cardi B likes it or not, Chris Blake Griffith's account is now officially part of the court record. Filed, docketed, public, and it is a lot. A lot that Cardi B either did not read, did not want to read, or read and decided the internet would never bother to look up. Chris Blake Griffith told police that Stefon Diggs, over the course of the evening, offered him candy, his exact word, candy, that he did not know was laced. He said the effect of the candy dilated his pupils so wide he could no longer see his own eye color in the mirror. He said his skin tingled. He said forming full sentences became difficult. He said Stefon Diggs then drove him back to the house in a two-seat Porsche, just the two of them, no one else in the car. He said Stefon Diggs put an arm around him at first, like a brother. He said the arm tightened. He said Stefon Diggs pulled him in and, I am reading directly from a federal court file, not paraphrasing, placed his tongue in Chris Blake Griffith's ear in what Chris called a kissing fashion and whispered for him to come to his room. Chris says he ran. He says he locked himself in a bathroom for 45 minutes trying to sober up and plan his exit from what he called an enormous property. He says when he came out, 2 women and 1 man cornered him, demanded he corroborate a story, stripped him, beat him, and robbed him of his jewelry and his silver titanium luggage, $30,000 to $50,000 in belongings, gone. He says he was then put in a car to the airport wearing what he called the worst clothes you can imagine. And then, a week later, May 29th, the Los Angeles incident. His words in the court file describe it as a hit Stefon Diggs sent on his life, which then got downgraded to an armed aggravated robbery when the alleged assailants could not complete the job. A hit downgraded to a robbery. And it does not stop there. In the same series of posts Stefon Diggs is now suing over, Chris Blake Griffith accused Stefon Diggs of operating what he called a sex ring out of his residence, of drugging people at private parties, of employing an assistant who, in Chris Blake Griffith's exact wording on page 8 of the filing, plays a Ghislaine Maxwell-esque role and practices witchcraft on the intended victims to prepare them. I promise you, that is a direct quote from a federal court document. We went from a charity basketball game to witchcraft in 8 pages. This, all of this, is what Stefon Diggs's lawyers are calling fiction. And once you read it back to back with the Rockville version, you understand why they are suing. But you also understand why Chris Blake Griffith is not backing down. Because Chris Blake Griffith is not fighting for a rap blog headline. Chris Blake Griffith is fighting to keep his own name off a settlement agreement that his opponent's brother already signed. Now here is what is bad for Chris Blake Griffith inside this file. He did not go to Montgomery County Police until October of 2024. That is 17 months after the night in question. 17 months. And when he finally did, Montgomery County Police took no action. No charges. No arrest. Nothing. That is inside the filing. On the Los Angeles side, even Chris Blake Griffith does not claim Stefon Diggs personally touched him. Stefon Diggs was reportedly not even in the state. Chris says Stefon Diggs sent people. That is a claim, and a claim without conviction is exactly the sentence Cardi B was leaning on. But here is what is bad for Stefon Diggs. His own filing kills the random stranger defense, because he is the one who invited Chris to that party. It also confirms that his brother's $10 million civil lawsuit did not get laughed out of court. That lawsuit quietly settled last week. Terms confidential. There is now a countersuit sitting on Stefon Diggs, sexual battery and civil conspiracy, accusing him of coordinating with his brother and two other men on the May 29th attack. And because of that conspiracy claim, Stefon Diggs got pulled into the Los Angeles case this spring as a cross-defendant, meaning this man is now defending the same night in two courtrooms on two coasts simultaneously. His own lawyers filed a motion begging the Maryland judge to slow it down, calling it, in their own writing, blatant gamesmanship. Chris Blake Griffith says he has 100 pages of text messages between him and Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs' response, on record, was not, "Those messages are fake." His response was, effectively, "Post them, then." That is either the most confident play I have ever seen from a defendant, or the most reckless. And in a federal courtroom, confidence and recklessness look identical right up until the jury walks in. Cardi B saw that same posture and read it as strength. 100 pages of anything is not something a smart defense team invites into public view without a plan. Either Stefon Diggs' team has already seen those messages and knows what they say, or Stefon Diggs' team is about to find out along with the rest of us. Then came June 3rd. And on June 3rd, the judge in this case dropped an 8-page discovery order that changed everything. I read it. Every line. And it is brutal for Stefon Diggs. When Chris Blake Griffith's lawyers asked Stefon Diggs, under oath, to describe his relationship to Chris, Stefon Diggs answered with essentially one word. Acquaintances. One word. For a man who personally invited him to a foundation event. That answer is now on the record. The judge then ordered Stefon Diggs to hand over, among other things, and listen closely, because this is where Cardi B's no evidence sentence starts to shake. Any payments Stefon Diggs made to the individuals identified in the May 29th assault between May and November of 2023. Every allegation of sexual misconduct ever made against him, by anyone, since 2020, charged or not. The identity of his public relations and reputation management team. And the judge added a line that lawyers rarely put in writing. If Stefon Diggs does not comply, the court is authorized to enter a default judgment. That is legal English for automatic loss on the entire case. Now, in fairness to Stefon Diggs, the same order cuts his way in places. The judge refused to force him to answer the drug question. The judge called most of Stefon Diggs' objections reasonable. The judge even called out Chris Blake Griffith's side for refusing to compromise on certain requests. This is not a one-sided ruling. But when a federal judge is publicly asking who got paid after an alleged assault, the phrase "there is no evidence" starts to age very, very quickly. Which brings us, once again, all the way back to Cardi B. Because here's what nobody's saying out loud yet. Cardi B did not just defend her baby daddy. Cardi B took a specific evidentiary position on a live audio room in front of over 100 million combined followers. She said there is no evidence. Now, and I want to be fair to her here, if what she meant is that there are no criminal charges, she is technically right. The filing itself supports her on that point. No charges. A police report submitted 17 months late. On the criminal side, the record is empty. But no criminal charges and no evidence are two entirely different sentences. And the civil paperwork against Stefon Diggs is not shrinking. It is stacking. A settled $10 million suit involving his brother. A countersuit that names Stefon Diggs directly. A federal judge asking who got paid. 100 pages of text nobody has publicly seen yet. Deposition transcripts that both men have already sat through. Cardi B compared this to her own courtroom win, the Tasha K case. And she was right to bring it up, because the Tasha K case is the exact reason she should have known better. She won that case because she walked in holding medical records. She won because the paperwork was on her side. This time, she picked a side before the paperwork hit the table. That is not the same play. That is the opposite play. And she made it in public, with her name attached, on behalf of a man she has publicly said, on her own live, she is currently beefing with. All while they are raising a baby that is not even a year old. And here's the part one want you to sit with, because the timing on this thing is the story. Discovery closed on July 2nd. Depositions are done. Both men have already answered questions under oath. 2 days ago, on July 14th, Stefon Diggs' legal team filed a motion for partial summary judgment, with actual deposition excerpts attached, asking the judge to kill part of this case before it ever reaches a jury. The judge has ordered a status report by July 20th. And the judge, on the same page, is already asking both sides whether they would like to sit down for settlement talks. If it does not settle, Stefon Diggs has demanded a jury trial. It is on the last page of the filing. 12 regular people. 12 strangers in a jury box. And those 12 strangers would then hear, out loud, in a federal courtroom, everything I just read you. The candy, the suitcase, the witchcraft, the 100 pages of texts, the confidential settlement, the word acquaintances, the June 3rd order, and floating over every second of it, whether her legal team wants it there or not. The voice of Cardi B on that live saying, "There is no evidence." A clip that has already been screen recorded, downloaded, and archived in every group chat in the country. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles case has its own trial date. January. On the other coast. Same alleged incident. 2 verdicts possible. 2 juries. 1 man. And in the middle of both of them, the mother of his youngest child on the record calling one of the plaintiffs a liar with no receipts. A mother whose album cycle is running on the exact same calendar as the discovery deadlines. The number of ways that math can go wrong for Cardi B is not small. If Stefon Diggs settles quietly, Cardi B looks like the woman who defended him too loudly. If Stefon Diggs wins at trial, Cardi B looks vindicated but attached to a scandal she never needed to touch. If Stefon Diggs loses at trial, Cardi B is the person who told 100 million followers to believe the man a jury just did not. There is not a version of this outcome where Cardi B walks out untouched, and that is before anybody talks about the baby, or the beef, or the Offset chapter she has been quietly trying to close all year. So the receipts are on the table. And the rest, honestly, is on you. Because after everything you just heard, straight out of a federal court file, there are really only 2 conclusions left. Either Chris Blake Griffith authored the wildest work of fiction the Montgomery County Police Department has ever received, and did it well enough to survive a federal discovery order and a countersuit, or Stefon Diggs has been living an entirely different life than the one his highlight reel shows, and just personally sued the one man who can prove it. There is no third option anymore. And Cardi B, for reasons only Cardi B can explain, chose to plant her name on one side of that answer before the 12 strangers ever got a chance to vote. So I need to hear from you. After reading the docket with me, the real one, not the TikTok version, whose story do you actually believe? Are you Team Cardi B and Team Stefon Diggs, standing behind the couple until a criminal indictment says otherwise? Are you Team Chris Blake Griffith, watching a plaintiff who filed his complaint calmly, kept receipts, and refused to insult the mother of his opponent's child? Or are you the third group, the one that says 100 pages of text messages, a settled $10 million suit, and a June 3rd discovery order are already too much smoke to keep calling this nothing? Do the court documents change your mind, or did they only harden the position you walked in with? And I need the mothers in the comments especially, because I already know you're here, to weigh in on this one. Knowing there is a baby boy attached to this story, a baby boy who is going to grow up one day and Google his own name. Would you have gone to war in public for a man you have already publicly said you are beefing with? Would you have stepped in front of a lawsuit that has your child's father's name at the top of it, on a live, without a lawyer next to you? Or would you have said nothing, protected the child, and let the court file speak for itself the way it is already speaking now? Drop it in the comments, because I read every single one, and I promise you the loudest debate on this channel this week is going to happen underneath this video. And do me one favor before you leave. Hit that subscribe button, turn the bell on, and share this with the one friend who has been in your ear about this case since day one. Because there is a status report dropping on July 20th. Deposition transcripts have already been quietly requested by 3 separate outlets. A jury trial is sitting in the wings on 2 different coasts. And somewhere in a group chat neither Cardi B nor Stefon Diggs has access to, 100 pages of text messages are waiting for the moment the judge gives the green light. This story is not over. It has barely started. And when the next page of that docket hits the internet, you're going to want to hear it here first.